Hello, and let's go ahead and implement this iteration. So switch to Xcode. And first thing I want to do is to add a property list file. So in the plus sign from the project navigator, or right click in the project navigator and say new file. And you get the file template, and we're looking for property list. It's under iOS in the resource. So we select the property list file. And then next, we'll give it a name. So I'm going to call it units. The name is very important because when we save a file into our project folder and try to access that file from the controller, we have to have the name exactly the way it is. So we're going to call this units. So the property list file has the name units, and it has an extension plist. And in the root row, you can set the type of the collection inside the file either as an array or as a dictionary. In an array collection, which what we used in module 1, you do not change the name or the index of the item. It indexed with a numerical index that starts at 0. So you see 0, 1, 2, and so on. However, in a dictionary, you can change the name. So now you can use whatever name you want and then provide a value. The name is called the key, and the value is the value there. And you specify a type, and this will be the same type, this will be the type of the value that you have. So I want the value to be a number. Notice something here, that you can have a dictionary and the value of that dictionary can be another dictionary or an array. And this will be very helpful if you want to create a dictionary of categories, and inside each category you have a list of units and their conversion factors. So we're going to make sure it is a number, not a string, so when we retrieve that value, we can use it in mathematics. So what I basically need to do here is to take the table that I assembled that has the unit name and the conversion factor and enter them in here. So I'm going to, this is the way the unit name will be, the unit names will be displayed in the picker view. So type it the way you want it to be displayed, and the first one is 1, and then you can hit enter to add the second one, and make sure that you change the type to number. Double click so you can enter it, and then the third one is meter, and this will be 39.3701. I want to make it a number, and then we'll have kilometer, and this will be 39370.1. Make sure it's a number, and then the miles, the last one, 63360, and that is also a number. So now I added my units. You feel free to add more to that, or change the I'm using length, and I'm using length for many reasons. The mathematical formula for conversion is easier, and so on and so forth. The point is not to challenge you mathematically here, it's just to show you how you can make the app. So we did this part and added the list. So the second part is to go to our custom controller. So the single view application, if you recall, does actually come up with one screen that has a custom controller called the view controller. If you look at the utility area on the at the identity inspector, you see the identity of the class that is behind the scene of this screen is called the view controller, which is our own custom controller that was added by the template, the single view controller, the single view template. So you can see here the name of the custom controller is view controller. That custom controller serves as a controller for a screen. So it extends or inherits the UI view controller. The UI view controller is a library class, and this is the default controller for any screen. If I switch and show you in the launch screen, since in the launch screen we use the default controller, if you look in the identity inspector, you see the name of the class UI view controller, and it's grayed out to indicate to you visually that this is a library class. This is not a custom class. So it has the default behavior that the library provides, which is all the management of the life cycle of the view, appearing, disappearing, launching the events, communicating with the operating system to shut down and close, and all of that. In this one, since I have a custom controller, your custom controller either have to redo all those fundamental operations of a controller, or you can just extend or inherit the behaviors and attributes that exist in the default controller, which is what we do. We use the colon to indicate that our custom controller is extending all the default behavior that exists in the UI view controller. What we need to do is we need to load the content of the unit list into an object in our custom controller. So we need to create an object to hold that, and that object is a dictionary for the units and an array for the unit names. And we need it once you know you want to create something. The second question that comes, where do you create it? And the location is important. If you want to create it within the class block, it will have the entire scope of the class, meaning any function inside the class will be able to access and use that variable or that object you create. If you create it inside the block of a particular function, it will have the scope of that function only, so it cannot be used outside the function. So if the variable you want, you know, or you expect it to be used in more than one function, create it with a class scope. If you know for sure it's only going to be used in one function, then you create it inside that function. So I know that the dictionary of the units will be used more than one function, as well as the array. And if you don't, just do either one, and the iterative process will correct your decision if it needs to be correct. So to create a variable, we use the keyword var. And the keyword var basically meaning allocate memory that can be changed, that can be reassigned. So I'm going to call it units. And this needs to be of type NS dictionary. And I don't want to initialize it, so I'm going to use the exclamation point to suppress the initialization error, suppress the language from forcing me to initialize. The reason I'm not going to initialize it is I'm loading the content of the file into that dictionary in the view did load. Then I need another one, and I'm going to be used for the unit names. And this will be an NS array, and I'm also not going to initialize it. Then when the view loads, which is the initial set when you load that view, that's where you want to open any files and load them. So, so I will need to get a reference to the app bundle, and then get a reference to the units file path, and then load the file into the units dictionary object, and then retrieve the unit names or keys of the dictionary into the unit names array object. So these are the 4 steps we need to do. I'm gonna close those so we have some room here. So to get the bundle, I need a reference to the bundle only locally. Locally meaning within that function. So I can define it here. I can define a variable or memory using var if it will be reassigned. The other way is to use let, which means it cannot be reassigned. It can be initiated in the beginning only and cannot be reassigned again. So I'm going to call it app bundle. And then use the bundle library. It's a class. And then use the main reference or the main variable in there to get a reference to the main bundle of my project. The main bundle of the project is basically the folder, the reference to the folder that all of this will be installed at either on the device or the simulated device. Then now that I have the bundle, I can seek the file name. So the file name is unit.plist, and I need a reference to that file name. So I'll say let file path equal, and then use the bundle to retrieve a reference to the path of the file. So you can get a path to a resource, which is what this file is. You will need to provide the name of the resource as a string and the type, which is the extension, as a string as well. And notice that the path gives you an optional variable with a question mark, so we have to add an exclamation mark at the end to suppress any issues and be able to use it. So here we need to provide a string, so the string type of a name, meaning that double quotation, and put the file name in it. So the file name is units, all lowercase, then all lowercase. This is case sensitive. So if your file name has an uppercase, then use uppercase. I do not recommend using spaces in the file name, so try not to do that. And then the extension is also a string. So you put the extension, which is the plist, not the dot. And then put the exclamation mark at the end because there was a question mark in the return value from the path. Now I have that, I can load the content of this file into a dictionary using the dictionary initializers, and then assign that result to this variable. So I'll say put the unit variable name and say I want to assign to this variable what is coming from the NS dictionary, and then look for the initializers. The initializers, and we're going to talk about them more in module 5, when you open a parentheses, you get access to all the available initializers that you can use for a dictionary. And one of them is content of file, provided that the path to the file is a string. You can also initialize a dictionary with content that is URL. Notice also there's a question mark, so we'll need to add an exclamation point at the end. We need to provide here the path, so file path, and then an exclamation mark at the end. So this function will try to locate this file and then opens the file in a dictionary. So the file must be in the format of a dictionary, that is a key and a value, and the type here is a dictionary. If this type is not a dictionary, this function will give you an error. Now that I have the dictionary, I need to load the keys inside that dictionary, which represent the names. So this is all the keys which represent the names. I need to load all of them into this unit names. So I'll say unit names and then equal. Then I'll ask the dictionary if it has the ability to give me the keys. So actually it does have the ability to give me all the keys, but it gives me the key as an array, not as an NS array. So I'll need to, I think you can initialize that to an NS array. It initializes itself directly. No, so here is the error message, and it says that you cannot assign the default array type to the NS array type. So how do you fix it? Insert this type. So I inserted that, and that should fix it for us. Let's test it. So one way of testing if actually successfully loaded the dictionary or not is to put a breakpoint. So I'm going to put a breakpoint here on the bundle and then run the app. This, you'll say, that, but how this view did load, how these instructions will be executed? I'll say that when the app loads, this screen will load, and once the screen loads, it will load the custom controller and load the view did load, which will then execute those functions. So even though I have an empty screen, this instruction will be executed, and I put a breakpoint which will stop the execution and give me the ability to execute one line at a time. It's called debug. So let's run, and it will load our launch screen. And once it loads the launch screen and be ready to load the actual main screen, it will stop and come here. So it stopped here at the breakpoint, and then we have in the variable window, we can see what data we have so far. So we are now waiting to execute the instruction that will retrieve the app bundle. So the app bundle doesn't have anything. These are the controls, so you can step over the instruction or you can step into the function. So you go inside the main and execute, or you step out from that view load, so it execute everything and bring you out, or you just move forward till the end. So I'm gonna step over to go one line at a time. So when I say step over, it will execute this first instruction, and now the app bundle has a value. So if I hover over the app bundle, you can see this is the address to the memory that has the app bundle value. And if you click on the eye or the this eye, it should give you the actual value, which should represent the path to the folder inside your simulator, or if this is running on your app, on the app. So this is the path to the folder. It starts from here, /users, and that's the path to the simulator, and on your computer it will be different. And then all the way at the end, this is the app file. This is your compressed or zip file for your app. So now we have the actual path to the folder. If I make another step over, now I have the path to the actual file, and you can see it here. And if I hover the file path, you can see the type, and if I click the eye here, if I click the eye, you can see the actual file name, and here is the file name at the end, units.plist, and all of it is a string, so you see the double quotation from the beginning. So that is the file inside the bundle, inside the folder, and that's the actual path. If you copy this path and go to your finder, not this one, the one that you see on your screen, and go to the finder, you actually can see the package of your app, and that is the file that will go on your device representing the app and all its content. So now we're ready to load that content into the units dictionary. So I move over, and now my units dictionary should have content. So if I hover over the units, it's not showing me. So if I click self, and here is the units, did not open it. It's not showing me. So let's do the unit names. And the unit names as an array, it has 5 values here. So it has 5 values. So that tells me it used to be that when I hover over, I can see the content. But apparently this is no longer the case. I can actually see the content. This is here, it is 5 values, and this is the index 0 value, this is 1, two, so it's kind of not easy to really figure out, but it seems I have the 5 values which I'm expecting. So that tells me that at least everything so far is going fine. So I'll stop here and delete the breakpoint by dragging it to the side. And we completed so far modify to load the content. Now we need to make the controller serve as a data source and a delegate to provide the picker view with the unit names. So to make the controller implement a protocol, any protocol, you go to the line where you define the class. This is the identification of the class that provide the name, the class it inherits, and then you add a comma and you provide the protocols that you implement. So we'll start with the UI picker view data source. Once you hit enter, Xcode will indicate an error, and the reason there's an error is that we indicated that the view controller is an implementer of the UI picker view data source, but we have not yet conformed to it by not providing the methods or the functions that represent it. In the data source, if you recall, there were two required functions: number of components and picker viewed with the number of rows in component. These two are required, but we did not implement them, and that's why we do not yet conform to that protocol. So let's implement them. So the first one is called number of components, and the purpose of that function is to provide how many columns should be displayed in the picker view. So if you just start typing the name, here it is, Xcode figures it out, number of components, so double click and Xcode adds the function. I do not recommend at all that you try to type the function names. There's so many details, different cases, and you're gonna make mistakes, and it's not gonna recognize that this is, if you make a mistake in the name or in the parameter list or the return type, it's not gonna recognize that this function is the same as this function. The function, that's the name, it receives a reference to the picker view and it returns an integer. So int is the type for an integer. We used float, float before, so that's the one for the non-decimal. When the function is indicate that it returns a number or an object, you have to use the keyword return, and then provide data that is comparable to this type. So in this case, I want to say return 1, because we're going to use only one component, one column, to put the unit names in it. Then the second function is how many rows. So we start typing, but the name of the function is picker view. So we start typing picker view, and here is the function, number of rows in component. This is the only available function because we indicated that we want to be implementing the data source. So that function is from the data source, so it is displayed. So here is the number of rows, and as you can see, it's a very long name. And once we put the name, the error next to the class is gone. It's no longer with us. So the function receives a reference to the picker view and a reference to the component. The way this works is when the picker view starts constructing its wheels, it looks for its attached or connected data source and say, how many columns should I create? And that's calling this function. So now we're returning and saying 1. We're answering the call, 1. Then when it creates the column, it starts to create the rows. So it comes and say, how many rows should I create for each of my columns? So it comes to this function and say, I have column at index 0, which is the first column, is index 0. So you come back and say, here is how many rows in index 0. Then it comes, if there's more than one column, it comes back and say, what is the second one and the third one, and so on. So here we need to provide the number of rows. I need as many rows as there are units. So how do I get the number of units? Well, I can look here and figure out it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then come and say return 5. But this is problematic. Why? Because if you decide that I want to change this and add more rows, I have to come back and change my code, and this is not recommended. We call this hard coding. Hard coding meaning we're tying our instruction to a specific value. What is better is to use variables and configuration parameters. So if I already have all the unit names is an array, why don't I ask the array for the count? So if I use the unit names and say the count, which gives you back an int, which is the same type as what's required, and it tells you how many objects. So if I successfully loaded the unit names into the array, the count will be whatever units there are. If they are 5, it will be 5. If they are 10, they will be 10. So now I told the picker view that I have how many columns and how many rows. Let's go ahead and add a picker view and see if this works. And I know I did not tell it yet what to display, but I want to take it step by step. In the utility area, in the project list, if you type in picker view, you should get the picker view object. And then drag a picker view to your screen. And we're going to be using 2 of them, so adjust the width. You can adjust the height as well. And place it the way you would like. You can look at the attributes of the picker view. There isn't really much that you can play with when it comes to the picker view. Then you have a controller that serves as a data source to a picker view, and you have the picker view. So I need to connect this picker view component to this controller. To do that, press the command button, the control, and drag from the picker view to the view controller symbol. And then release. Once you release, it says that the picker view can connect to the controller as a data source or delegate. I only have the controller ready to be a data source, so just connect to the data source. So now my picker view is connected to the controller as a data source. So let's run. If it works, you should see one component with 5 items that are all blank. Nothing on them. In order to tell the picker view what to display on each row, you need to be a delegate for the picker view. So the purpose of the data source is only to tell the picker view how many components and how many rows. It cannot provide more than that. The delegate is the one that can tell it, here is your title or the view or whatever it is for you to display. So here is a picker view, and it has 5 components. And here is the selector of the picker view, and it created one component which was 5 rows, but there's nothing in each row because there's no delegate yet for the picker view. So let's go and make our custom controller a delegate. So we add another protocol to the definition to make the custom controller a delegate. So UI picker view delegate. Picker view delegate. So we added the UI picker view delegate as well. Notice that with the UI picker view delegate, we did not get an error because the UI picker view delegate does not have a required function. As we see here, the methods are not required, but one of them must be there. So either the title for row if you want to display pure text, or view for row if you want to construct a custom view, maybe with an image or something, and display it. I'm going to use the title for row. So we come here and implement that function. So the function name is picker view, but it has a parameter called title for row. So I'll say picker, start typing. I'll just put it with the others. So picker view. Now you see there are more than one picker view function because there are so many of them as a delegate. Now once we made our view controller a delegate, there are more functions available for us that we can implement. So I'm going to choose the title for row. So the title for row receives the picker view that is making that request, the index of the row, the index of the component. So it says when the picker view is constructing itself, it sent itself to the delegate and say, for me, I'm constructing the first column component 0, and I want to construct the first row. Give me the string that I should add or put in the title for that row. So I need to return back a string. Where is that string? The string here in the unit names. So I return the unit names, and I will return the index corresponding to the row. So whatever the unit names are ordered, that's the order I'm going to display here. So unit names dot object at, which returns back an object, but returns an object of any type, which is a very generic type. I need it as a string, so I'm going to have to convert from any to a string. So object at, what is the index? I'm going to use the row index as the index, and then we need to convert that to the type string. And I guess something needs to be fixed. Because we have add parentheses around the cast to silence the warning, or add use as so there are multiple things as conditional downcast, because we're going from a generic type to a non-generic type, or just add a parentheses to silence the warning. So the two options, and you can choose whichever one. So we'll just do that. And then let's run. So if this runs correctly, I should have the names of the units displayed in the picker view. So the launch screen, and now it is loading the unit names in the file, and oops, it's not showing. It's the same thing. So what's happening? I made my controller capable of being a delegate. Yes? But if you recall, we had to tell the particular picker view object where to go for its data source. We also need to tell it where to go for the delegate. So select the picker view, press Control, and drag to the symbol for the controller. And now we need to define this particular controller as the delegate for that picker view. So this tells the picker view where to go to find its delegate. Otherwise, I have a delegate in my project, but the picker view does not know that that delegate exists. So it's not going to ask for the content of the rows from that delegate. Now that we connected it, we should see the unit names, or hopefully. So here are the unit names: kilometer, feet, miles, meter, inch. Notice they are not in the same order that we had them in the file, because they were loaded in the dictionary and the order is not guaranteed, and then we pull them as unit names, and the order also is not guaranteed. But that completes this iteration 3, and we displayed the list of names in the picker view. So this should work as the list where the user will tell us the original unit. So I want to convert to 10, and those 10s are currently in feet, so they make do like that and select the feet. We need another one so that they can tell us the unit they want to convert to, and this is the topic for the next iteration.